welcome. On this episode of Abby Normal Garage, we're doing a new segment called Tractor Tuesday. Today, we're doing an overview of our 1998 wheel horse trail horse build. My first video on this tractor goes into the details of construction somewhat, but not really in depth. So let's start at the top. We got the hood open. So let's start with the gauges. The four outer gauges, the vacuum, the voltmeter, the tach, and the gas gauge, they're all out of a wheel horse 520. The speedometer is driven by GPS. And so far, the tractor has 67 miles on it since new. Like I said, the back of the gauges aren't necessarily as neat. They all have LED lights in them. And I made a wiring harness and I welded those two supports in there to hold the wiring harness up. Well, let's roll down here to the front. These are just your standard wheel horse headlights. These are the color changing bulbs we used in the parades. We're probably going to leave those in there. This is the speed sensor for the GPS. This here is the winch controller. I haven't found a remote to replace the one I'm missing, so I'm using the cable one. It comes down, goes in between this spot and the frame to go down to the winch, which is down here, which we'll cover in a second. This is just your standard 22.5 Kohler command. I took an Onion P220 muffler and made it work. If you're familiar with that, you'll know that they don't look anything like that. Pardon the dust. We haven't necessarily cleaned it up so well from Ederville. Here is the circuit breaker for the winch. So when the winch is on, like so, there's an indicator on the dash to let you know that that circuit's on. Of course, when you turn it off, it's off. This is your standard battery disconnect. I decided to do that for safety reasons. Now, if you notice, this battery is actually further forward than it is on the standard 300 and 400 series tractors. Here's the box tractor for comparison. We had to move the battery further forward so it would clear the gauges. This here, one of the biggest gripes I have with this series of tractors is the hood slides around on this, and I figured on the rough terrain of the trail that would be a problem, so I put this in here, and there's a pin on the bottom of the hood that drops into that hole to keep it steady. You can see this is the metal steering column. It comes down. It's got brackets welded to hold it. I replaced my indicators with LEDs. Let's come down this side of the tractor. Obviously, we have some custom wheel horse decals done by Midwest Decals, also known as redoyourhorse.com. He does a great job. I highly recommend him. So this tractor has power steering, and the power steering pump is ran off a second belt that comes off of the drive pulley. So you'll notice this bump out in the belt cover for that pulley. That's really the only real important thing on this side. We'll touch on the steering ram real quick. So this steering ram is a 6-inch stroke, 1-inch diameter ram with swivel ends that I got off Amazon. They're quite pricey, but so far it's been very good. Of course, it's welded onto a stock 520 knuckle. We welded on additional steering stops to keep the wheels from grinding. And the actual tie bar goes into the factory 520 tie rod mounting hole. So, trying to use what we got. Of course, this plate clads the frame, is welded into this bumper. We have a Badlands 2500 winch. Mostly I use it to load the tractor in and out of the trailer or the truck or whatever it may be. It seems to do well. We have a functional 2-inch receiver in the front. I have used it to move boats. This tractor is not necessarily the best for moving boats because you can only turn so sharp before it hits the wheels. Didn't really think that through, obviously. Of course, when you run the 520 spindles, it allows you to run 1-inch trailer hubs. So basically, those are trailer hubs with wheels bolted to them. This side has a little bit more to show. This is the bracket where the hydraulic ram mounts. Looks pretty good. You can see the skid plate, and that's a heavy freaking skid plate. That is solid 3/4 rod bent up. The bottom's cladded with 1/8 inch steel. It's quite a pain to hold it up and bolt it in. This side has the best view of the power steering pump. This is just your standard GM Type 2 reverse rotation power steering pump. Nothing too special about it. Of course, we hand built this bracket that it's on. It's got an adjuster down there. You loosen those bolts, tighten up on that, and it pulls the belt taut. I went ahead and got a flashlight. You can see the power steering pump pulley and the actual tractor drive belt running right next to it. It's pretty tight clearance, but it seems to work okay. Further back, we have this. Now this is the power steering cooler. It has a fan behind it. Now I've never actually seen this fan turn on, but I know it works. So the fan is controlled by this temperature switch, which is midline of the hydraulic hose. And the hottest I've ever seen this fluid gets 130. While we're back here, we got all the brackets to mount the rack. We have our gas tank. This access hole was drilled last minute to get to the transmission dipstick. Those are the lights for the rack wiring coming up. Of course, it has taillights in the factory location. They're not really visible. We're now laying under the tractor. Abby's kind of making this hard to film. That is the rock light. There's one on either side. These are the hydraulic hoses to the ram. They come up under here and go to this orbital control valve here. You can't really see much looking up, but yeah. All the hoses connect up there. Look around the transmission pulley, you'll notice those pins that keep the belt from popping off. That was a last minute addition. This hose running to the back is the fuel line. You can see the fan behind the power steering cooler here. And also, it's very obvious I need to do some wiping up under here. It's kind of nasty. Hello, Abby. Are you getting under here too? Okay. You want to cuddle? You don't want to cuddle? Don't paw me. You don't want to get down here? No? Okay. This angle here gives you a pretty good shot of the power steering and how it works. The ram bolts here, runs to that spindle over there, and that spindle is linked to this spindle over here. So it's pretty simple, and it works pretty well. It's effortless to steer this thing in any situation. The dash is pretty much, well, your standard wheel horse affair, other than the gauges. This is a steering wheel off a 70s C-Series, or just the 70s wheel horses in general. We prefer this style over the new ones. We've got our indicators. We also have an oil pressure gauge. Of course, we have switches for our rear light, rock lights, front lights. The main light switch is on the key switch. We retain that because that was a standard on this generation of wheel horse. Of course, it's your standard 8-speed. This little micro switch here triggers the backup lights in reverse. We've put 72 hours on this tractor since we built it. That's awesome. This rack was covered pretty extensively in the actual build video. But it's, again, 3/4 tubing, extruded steel base. This here's our umbrella and flagpole mount. It's sturdy as can be. We hit a tree, it puzzled with our flagpole, and it bent the flagpole. Did not bend this rack or this mount. Bent the heck out of the flagpole, though. This is Abby normal. Okay. So under here is pretty much all standard wheel horse stuff. The rear seat bracket obviously is longer because the transmission's lower. It's got wheel spacers. The bumper was covered in pretty good detail in the build video as well. But as you can see, it's very sturdy. The hitch is very sturdy, the D-rings and everything. These rods coming down are solid 3/4. Bent up. They go into these hollow sockets that are welded on. I decided to have the Baja Tough logo made. The Baja Tough was, I think it was 1990, that Wheelhorse took a 520 and drove it across the Baja Peninsula. 500 miles in like 5 days, I think they said. They didn't have any problems. And I want to say that 1990s or 91s had this on the hood as an option. So we had to get that because obviously this thing is Baja Tough. You know. Well, this is the first installment of Tractor Tuesday. This time we overviewed the Trail Horse. Covered some of the features pretty decently. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to let us know in the comments. We'll be more than happy to answer them. We're going to follow this up with a couple minutes of footage of this tractor. If you like what you see, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to share it with all your wheel horse friends.